welcome. Fantastic. We have such a good group of students here today. I'm really excited to see so many of you here. We also have 3 very special guests who are going to talk with us in just a little bit, but we are here today talking about accessing jobs and internships. And Donna, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce people, but please know that we are recording this session and it will be available after the fact on Cat Connect and on our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. So I'm Donna Montoya. I'm one of the other assistant directors here at Linfield Career, and we recognize a lot of these students online, so we're glad you're here today. We have 3 amazing presenters they'll each give you a little bit of insight into their roles and their organizations that they represent, and also a piece of the puzzle as you're looking to successfully apply to a job or an internship. So we are going to hear first from Tim Butler, who is a Linfield alumnus, and Tim is part of the new Relic team. Then we get to hear from Pamala Flores, who is part of the talent acquisition team with Nike. So welcome, Pamela. And then we have Tina Ford, who is joining us shortly, and she represents Kroger. And so they hire for companies like Fred Meyer and other retail chains. And she is also on the recruiting and talent acquisition side. So we want to get started because each of the 3 presenters has great information. We want to give them the time, and we'll move forward so that you can have time to ask questions as well. So Tim, we will start with you and take it away.
Thanks, Donna, and thank you all for inviting me to speak today, and happy to be here. Always happy to chat with students, specifically students from my alma mater. Really enjoyed my time there. And I will say that I'm not as old as my slide says. I actually graduated in '89, so I can take a year back. But as it says, I am a technical sourcer for New Relic. And if you don't know who New Relic is, we are a software company that's headquartered in San Francisco, but we have a large footprint in operations in the downtown Portland area. We're right in that tall building that's known as Big Pink, where we have, I think, about 5 floors and about 600 employees altogether working out of the Portland location. And globally, we're about 2,300 employees. I'm part of the talent acquisition team, and a technical sourcer might not be easy to figure out what that is, but basically it means that I'm a recruiter. I'm a technical recruiter that is part of the team that supports the product organization, and the product organization makes up engineering, product design, as well as product management. And as a sourcer, I like to think about it as being a fisherman, essentially, where I grab my fishing pole and I cast out into different candidate pools, looking for candidates to fill the small group of positions that I'm working on. And it could be usually it's the most difficult positions that we have to fill. So not necessarily our entry-level roles or even our mid-level positions, but it would be more of like a senior software engineer or a director of product design or a lead product designer position. But I do work on a variety of different roles, like I said, within the product organization, and it's really all about the external outreach. So I'm poking around LinkedIn and other corners of the internet to try to find potential candidates for the open opportunities that we have. And the exciting thing for me is I'm working for a company that has this product. And unless you're a software engineer, it might not mean anything to you. But if you think about as a consumer and you think about buying tickets online or buying any sort of product, you think about Amazon or any e-commerce sites, we are on the back end basically helping those companies keep their systems and applications up and running. And so we have a cloud-based software as a service product that allows our customers to be able to see what's happening and make sure that the health and performance of their software and their systems is running at optimal time. So that's the exciting thing for me, is that I get to work on a product or a suite of products that I know that other engineers and technical professionals are excited about, and hopefully it's a product in the marketplace that they understand and can get behind. And so it helps when you think about it being a great place to work as well too, in terms of great company culture. And we have a lot of positions that we're working on. So we're a growing company. We're not a dying breed. We're continuing to develop and iterate on our product. And so lots and lots of positions that are open, both technical as well as non-technical roles. But what I wanted to talk about specifically is professional connections. And I look at that as being under the umbrella of personal branding and networking. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot in your career development coursework about the power and value in networking. And for me, it's something that I learned early. At a basic level, it's always great to make connections with your peers, but it's even greater to make connections with even adjacent industries, let's say, and just professionals that may be adjacent to whatever industry or business that you're looking to enter into. Because having a strong professional network is something that can help you immediately, but definitely can help you in the long term. And if you think about it more about just continuing your education in a way, networking gives you that opportunity to broaden your horizons as you learn more about different businesses and industries. Even if you're not working in them, you never know when you might meet somebody that you can help out and make an introduction to, or when you might be on that job search path, you might be able to go back to your network and meet somebody that's in an industry that you would have never thought you would have anything to do with, but they're able to then help you out in your job search. And one of the typical ways or standard ways about going out and networking is using LinkedIn. You don't necessarily have to have a LinkedIn profile now, but at some point you definitely want to have a LinkedIn profile. I would recommend doing it as soon as you can because it's going to be helpful for attracting campus recruiters. And when I say campus recruiters, I'm not talking about college admissions. I'm talking about those recruiters that work for businesses that have people who are interested in actively recruiting students for their undergraduate internship programs or entry-level early career opportunities as well. But I also encourage you to look at other avenues as well. Sites like Twitter can be a great place for networking and just establishing yourself. And it's not necessarily just for specific careers like software engineering. That's what led me to Twitter, but there are tons of marketers, social media professionals, a wide variety of industry can be found on Twitter. And so I would consider LinkedIn and Twitter as sort of your standard companies or platforms rather in the social media sphere, but also thinking outside the box. If you are an engineer or want to be an engineer, GitHub and Stack Overflow are also great places. You can throw Reddit in there as well, because those are communities where you can, I call them sandboxes. You can play around with your code, but you can also have conversations with your peers. And that can be someone who's in a boot camp that's learning how to code. It could be somebody who's learning how to code by themselves online, or it can be even better, more established engineers who are posting in these open source communities that you can contribute to or sort of sit back and watch and learn and ask questions of. For Meetup is also a great site because Meetup, you can focus in on whatever your industry of choice is, but you can also find some generic networking opportunities through Meetup as well too. And then of course, industry groups is another great way. I work in tech, so I tend to think of sites like Calligator.org, which I tell anyone who's interested in getting into the Portland tech scene to look at, because Calligator, and if you think of the word calendar and aggregator combined.org, that's calligator.org. And it is a great site for finding out about different events that are happening within the Portland tech scene. And those can be virtual events and it can be in-person events. And it's a great way to find out about different user groups, whether it's for someone who is thinking about becoming a Scrum Master, or maybe they're interested in product design or product management. And then of course you also have your specific user groups for those that are coders who are interested in a specific programming language, and meeting other developers, engineers who are operating and coding with those languages. So those are just examples of different social media platforms. But I know that not everyone is excited about networking, and maybe they're hearing the message that that's the best way to get a job. The thing that I would say is, don't look at it as something that's super stressful and the only way to get a job, but think of it as a long-term approach to building a network of peers that you can continue to learn and develop yourself and your skills professionally, not just a way and a means for finding a job. And understand too that if you are an introvert, there are lots of introverts who network. And in this pandemic world that we're in right now, there are quite a few opportunities to do so virtually. So take advantage of different virtual events that are out there as well too. And I know that I'm probably at time. I could go on and on about this, but a quick personal branding story. I made a career transition from insurance into recruiting, and did so because of my activity on Twitter. And that is a true story. I was posting on Twitter a variety of different Twitter chats that led to me having coffee with a couple of people who are already in the recruiting industry. One of those individuals asked for my resume, handed it over to someone who had a small agency. That person didn't have an opening, but they handed it off to a friend who was in the industry. And that individual gave me my first job in recruiting. And I've never looked back. So networking definitely works, but just understand that it's part of what I call a layered approach, like marketing, a layered approach to ultimately reaching your career goals. So thank you. Appreciate it. And I think I'll be available for questions later.
Thank you, Tim. And I'm actually, as you were talking, I brought some links up, and so I'm going to share them in the chat for everybody. I think they're the correct ones. So there's New Relic's information about culture and career, and then some of the websites that you give everyone. So hopefully those are great resources that people can use. And thank you for sharing that piece of the puzzle. We'll turn it over to Pamela, and I know that you have a screen to share. So I know Christy will organize that for us, and we're excited to hear from you.
Hi, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Tim. I really resonated with everything you were saying, and I love hearing about how people got into the recruiting industry, because it's pretty unique. So great tips. But yes, I'm going to be talking about virtual interview tips, and a few of you actually came to a networking night workshop that we had on the Nike campus last year. This past year we went virtual, so it was super different. And so I want to share a little bit about what I've learned from doing that switch from in-person networking events to virtual networking events, and then also what I've seen and what I've heard from a lot of the candidates that I'm working with. So just to back up a little bit, my name is Pamala Flores-Sandoval. I've been at Nike for 3 years now. During my time at Nike, I've supported the finance and accounting recruiting, the HR department's recruiting, as well as I'm currently moving into the strategy team. So a little bit of a mix. And so just being open to opportunities as they come your way, it's only going to allow for growth. And another thing is that a lot of my job changes came very organically, just based off the relationships I had with people in my department, outside of my department. So, like Tim said, sometimes you can network without even knowing or using traditional networking tactics. And excuse my puppy, he is a little crazy this morning if you hear him in the background. So I want to share a little bit about networking, or I'm sorry, about virtual interviewing here at Nike. And I will pull up the actual formal document that we send to all of our candidates. And so this is our virtual interview guide here. And I know it's a little bit wordy, but I want to go through each of the points pretty quickly. And the number one being lights. So I think being in a very well-lit space is absolutely crucial. I always recommend sitting by your window. I've propped up my home office right by the corner of my living room, 2 windows that I have, and I always get compliments on my lighting. So just making sure and being very aware that this is what the person on the other side is seeing. And then also making sure that you're positioning your camera at eye level. Sometimes I get people that are sitting on their couch and probably resting their laptop on their lap. And it's very obvious, it's very noticeable. Or, I always think if you have a spot to stand by, like a very high, like bar stool or something like that, and you can prop your laptop up, that's great too, but just have it being eye level. And then just try to remember that there is a real person on the other side, and just try to be as natural as possible. The same as if you were in-person networking, you want to be focused on the person. Obviously, you can't make direct eye contact, but whatever the equivalent of that might be. That leads us to number 2, which is technology and Wi-Fi. This is can be a huge barrier. So, just testing out your Wi-Fi, making sure your connection is secure. If it's not, then looking for a space that is, I don't know if anyone had any power outages with this snow, but I did recently. And so I would be using like hotspots. I know some people would like go to their neighbors' houses to just get on Wi-Fi for meetings and whatnot. So just really making sure that you're secure on that end. And then finally, the number 4 point is really good. Close your apps, turn off your notifications, turn off your email messages. You'd be surprised how many ins and outs there are to screen sharing if you are screen sharing. And so you don't want anything distracting you or distracting the person on the other side of the interview. And yes, headphones are great if you aren't in a quiet zone, or if you have a little puppy that is a little bit wild like mine. And then look your best. Remember that it is an interview, even though you're at home. I always recommend like putting your full suit on. You can have your pajamas bottoms on if that's how you feel most comfortable, but it might even help you feel more confident if you're like fully dressed in your outfit. So this tip right here in the middle is specifically for Nike because we're a very casual environment, but it might be different at New Relic. I think that they might prefer like a button up or whatnot. So work with your recruiter, ask around and get a feel for what the best outfit would be, but ultimately do what makes you comfortable and what's going to make you feel confident. If you don't want to have a Zoom background, sometimes I have my Zoom background off and I highlight like my plants, I'll rearrange stuff. I've done different talks where, I'll have like Shoe Dog, which is a book back here. So you could really play with your space depending on what your interview is for or about. And practice makes perfect. This is nothing new. It doesn't have anything to do with being in a virtual environment. You should always be prepared and practicing. So make sure that you have access to the Zoom link. Make sure if you are sharing, you know how to share. You can set up different test runs. I have had my sister hop on a Zoom call with me just so that I can make sure that everything is going to run smooth during an interview. And yeah, also another thing that you can plan for is how you're going to take notes. Do you prefer to take notes on your laptop while you're on the interview, or do you want to take handwritten notes? I think giving your interviewer a heads up for either one is a good idea, just so that, they don't think you're like on your phone or whatever. Make sure, that's kind of out of sight as well. And then finally, yes, as much as you can, try to make sure that there's not a lot of distractions around you or interruptions. Obviously, we're all in this virtual environment together. We have, every household is a little bit different. So just giving people a heads up or addressing it like I did with my puppy, I think it's going to just humanize the experience and make everyone feel more comfortable. So I'm happy to share this document with you, Donna, if you want to distribute it to the students as well. Obviously, this is a very like Nike branded interview guide, but I do think that you can use it across any interview that you are completing.
Thank you. And yeah, we'd love to have that document. I think the Nike specific part is just a good example of whether someone's applying to Nike or not. That's the type of stuff that you want to be looking for as you talk to your recruiters or as you talk to your other contacts in the company. So that's wonderful. Thank you. And sometimes it is humanizing when a puppy makes an appearance and then you're able to acknowledge it. I'm gonna
icebreaker, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to share really quick just the main job link for jobs at Nike, and there's a lot in there, and I think most people would be able to find it or have on their own, but I wanted to share that. And thank you for your insight. That's a wonderful 5-step document. That's super helpful. I am going to turn it over to Tina now. And so Tina's joining us from Kroger. She's in talent acquisition.
Yeah, so I'm Tina Ford. I as of a couple hours ago, I am now HR generalist at Kroger for general merchandise. So I did but talent acquisition will still fall under me going forward for the GM side of the business. So GM is general merchandise, meaning anything Kroger sells that's not edible, basically. So all the categories like apparel, housewares, garden center, toys, electronics, all of those fall into general merchandise. And the general merchandise team is headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Kroger itself is headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we employ about 500,000 people across the US. And we have been busy this last year, so crazy busy. And so I work specifically with the general merchandise team and mostly on the buying and planning and product development side of that business. And so we have a very good intern program that we run at our Kroger main office here in Portland. And it feeds into our general merchandise training program. So that is a program we've put together to get people to be buyer and planner ready in about 3 to 4 years. So you spend time as an assistant buyer and then some time as an assistant planner before you're ready to step into a buying or planning role. And so it's a very well-developed training program that we have. And so every year I hire about 16, 17 interns, and that's usually what I'm on campuses recruiting for. So, so that's really kind of my focus. And then I think, as far as assessing culture and fit is really important. I think that internships are really key to doing that for students who are looking at companies. I think, when you are getting ready to interview, and that you can do your research on a company before, you sit down in an interview. So I can definitely tell who has and who hasn't, for you to, you have a lot of tools as far as being able to use Google and go to the company's website to see what it is they stand for, what do they support, what, and even what they're looking for in associates, and products that they sell and companies that they work with. And so you can find out a lot that way. And then, like I said, when you do an internship, that you can really embed yourself and see what day-to-day looks like, everything from what it's like to sit in a cube, or maybe they don't have cubes, and maybe that's not an environment that you work well with. On our side, we, can assess fit. Like one of the questions that we often ask are, tell me about a job or a volunteer opportunity that you felt was a good fit for you, and why is that? So we, can learn more about you as far as what is comfortable for you. Because I remember, one of the interviews that I asked that, the person was like, well, my favorite was when I was outside in the forests, working with plants and things like that. And I was like, how is that going to translate for you sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours every day? And they're like, yeah, I don't know that I'd enjoy that. And so then I was like, so let me tell you about what a buyer does. So I mean, that's pretty basic, but still, you can find a lot about a person, through those kinds of questions. So so I would say definitely just ask questions and do your research. If it's a product or, a brand that you're going to go work for, go shopping, purchase it, use it before you go in, and know what that company is. I worked at Portland State at one point in my career, and we had a student who went into an interview with Pepsi carrying a Diet Coke. And so, it's like, be really mindful of when you're going into interview, that you've put the effort in to look at that company and research them to find out more. And building your network, just to circle back to Tim, is super important. I got my job at Kroger about 4 years ago, and it was the person who hired me out of college into my first job, which was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now. And so it was by that connection and staying in contact with those people that I was, hired again the second time by her. So, so that is so important for you as you continue your career and build your networks.
Thank you, Tina. And I'm going to add the link to the jobs at Kroger as well, so that everyone has a chance to look at that. So we had 3 expert presenters and 3 great pieces of finding those jobs and internships and what you can do as you prepare to apply, and questions you may be asked while the organizations are assessing your fit, and that helps you assess if they're the type of place that you might want to work as well. So at this time, we'd love to open it up for questions. And so we have one from Michael. So how can our students differentiate themselves to get noticed before the application stage? And we will see, Tim, Tina, or Pam, do you have thoughts about that?
For me, I would say it's always going to be, just understand that it's always going to be challenging to set yourself apart, but do your best to try to find an experience that you can look to that you were part of. If you had, let's say, 2 jobs as a student, is there something in there that you can pull from that experience and talk about, whether it's how you worked with customers or how you showcase leadership skills, critical thinking, problem solving, being able to work with others. If you can somehow demonstrate and talk about that in your cover letter, your resume. Those are things that will definitely help you out. And even as a student, if you are working on a project and you were leading a project, so being able to show that you've got those leadership skills again, or those problem solving, collaboration skills, that's kind of what I look for.
I think he hit the nail on the head. Really just bringing your experiences to life. When I interview people, I really want to hear their story. I want to hear what makes them them, because ultimately that's what you're bringing to a company. For me, it's very important to build a relationship with candidates, regardless of what level they're coming in at. So yeah, bring your experiences to life. Tell me about your story. If there is a personal connection, like to the brand, I want to hear about that. I want to know that, don't be afraid to let your true self be seen, because I think we can get very formulaic with networking or interviewing. So just bring yourself into it. I think that's the best way to have yourself be stood out. I look at tons of resumes all the time, and I remember the people who I had a real conversation with, who told me something about them, what makes them tick. I think Tina mentioned that, what did you like about it? I want to know about you. So yeah, I think that's the best way to bring yourself to life before and during the interview.
Yeah, I think being authentic and just, and definitely wherever you can show and talk about your experiences, especially with leadership, in regards to leadership, I think, when you're just starting out, that's really important, because that's a piece that you don't necessarily have to have had job experience, but you can pull from, school projects or other experiences in your life that can help explain that or show that.
Thank you. And we do want to open it up to questions from everyone else who's participating. So feel free to unmute yourselves to ask, or if you would like to type the question in the chat, I can repeat it for everybody. And I'll give you a moment to think about if you have any questions for all of the panelists or just one specifically, so you can type it in there. One question that I have is, from you in the recruiter standpoint, we know that online networking is important, and that can create the connections. And many times when people are applying and looking for their jobs, they do have to submit something through a digital system. What's the best way for someone to connect personally with either you or through a colleague? How does that resonate with you when you're taking something from the online world and making it more of a personal connection?
I think a great way to do that, and also, find out more about a company. And one thing that you can do, especially as a student, are ask for informational interviews from folks. And you can, like Tim talked about, building a network through LinkedIn. So you can look for people who are in certain roles or with certain companies that you might be interested in or that you're going to apply for. And if you reach out as a student and ask for an informational interview and just ask some questions about the company and what their role is, what their careers look like, people are really willing to do that for students. And so you might be able to also find and get connected to alums from, Linfield that could help you connect with people that way too. And then once you've had that connection, then sometimes you can follow it up with, I've applied to this job. If you know someone, and you could help me out, or pass on my resume through this way as well. I think that can help.
And Tina, something that you said resonates a lot with Linfield. As you know, I think all three of our panelists have been recipients of emails from us helping connect students to you for informational interviews, whether it's because they're really interested in what you're doing as a possible career path, but also because they're interested in a possible job or internship. And so it's wonderful that everyone on this call can hear it directly from you, that it is confirmation that it's a great way to start more of a personal professional relationship once you do make those connections via LinkedIn and other platforms. So that's wonderful. Pamela or Tim, do you have anything to add about making a personal connection offline?
Yeah, and I think it also ties in with Michelle's question, which is, what do you recommend for individuals who are feeling discouraged for job searching when they're unsure about what they want to do or what to look for? So a few things. I do my best to respond to as many LinkedIn students specifically as possible, just because that's a passion of mine. I love working with students, but I don't personally recruit a lot of students into Nike because just the level of positions I work on. And so some of the advice that I often give students, or anyone, like, you can be like Tim, just switch your career down the line. I do recommend going on to websites like Donna put the links here. Click on the Nike website, look up keywords that you think might be interesting, and start doing research. You know, when I was in my undergrad, I would like print off job descriptions, highlight stuff, like mark them up, and then reach out to people on LinkedIn to get a better understanding of what that actually looks like day to day. Because job descriptions, you know, they're just that. It doesn't really encompass everything, the whole scope of the work, or what it looks like, or who you have to partner with. So the best way to learn about that is from someone who's actually doing it, or someone who has done it in the past. So, you know, I started off at a staffing agency. If someone has a question about what it's like to work at a staffing agency, I'm happy to share that. And I think that's the best way to really find out, is do some research and then follow that up with the personal connections. Because even if you get off the call and you're like, yeah, I don't know if the staffing agency is for me, now we know each other. I know what you're interested in. And then that's how, you know, my network can become your network. I can refer you to the next person. That's another good tip I like to give students specifically. Always follow it up with, well, do you have any names? Is there anyone that you recommend I should connect with? Because I try to do that, but it might just not come naturally. So definitely as a student, ask who else you should be in contact with. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, those are both great points. And the only thing I would add to that is when you're reaching out for the informational interview, there's no need to be apologetic about it, because to Tina's point, there will always be several people who are willing to talk to you about what it is that they do and what their company is about. I like what she said about doing research. It's so evident when someone does not do research. So if you're ahead of the game, like before the application even gets submitted, if you're already reaching out to those target companies or professionals who are doing what you would like to do, you know, maybe do a little bit of research so that you can have 4 or 5 questions to ask them. And I would say, always be cognizant of their time, and maybe say it's 20 minutes, but you'd be surprised if it goes 30 minutes and they're okay with it, or if it goes maybe even 45 minutes and they're still okay with it, because they want to give back. They want to talk about themselves or their companies, and they want to help the next generation, so to speak, also find their way in their career search. So yeah, don't be apologetic about it. Just straightforward, make the, you know, let them know why you're reaching out. And even in a venue like this, if someone reaches out to me and they simply say, hey, Tim, it was great, you know, meeting you virtually via whatever, I'm always more likely to accept those than kind of the cold. So even if you don't meet somebody at an event, just always make sure you put some sort of a personal invitation and some context into why it is that you're reaching out to them. And they'll be more than happy to accept your LinkedIn invitation.
And that's great advice for the couple questions that came through. And I think especially it can be a longer or sometimes more difficult process as you're figuring out what you want to do. But I think informational interviews can be really inspiring for that. One question that I really like to ask, especially when we're doing site visits, is a question somewhere along the lines of, what's a time where you did fail and how did you overcome it? Or what is a hard piece of your career path? Because I think a lot of the times when we meet professionals who are really successful in what they're doing, it's just assumed that that's just how it goes and that's how it's supposed to be. But really everyone has to overcome something. And it's nice to know that you can be successful, and part of it is because something was a little harder or because you had to fail and learn. And so hopefully that changes the perspective on it. We have another question, and it is for any of the three of you who especially work with this. Do you have any advice for how to navigate a multiple interview process?
I would say, well, one thing I would say, whenever you're interacting with the company that you're interested in, we're in a pandemic world, so on-site is a little different, but think of it in a non-pandemic world. Never discount the person that you interact with first, because if it's a receptionist, somebody that's there to greet you, they may not be interviewing you, but they're interviewing you. So just, if you had a tough time in the parking lot, or if you took the bus, whatever you just present your best self and don't take it out on that individual, because they may report that. Or somebody could be up in the window watching you approach the building. And so just, even though that's not the official interview, just know that once you're on site, the interview has begun. But what I would say in terms of the multiple interview process, that first point of contact, find out what the interview process looks like. At New Relic for software engineering, I tell pretty much everybody that it's a basic talent acquisition, and we call it a recruiter screen. And then it's the hiring manager, which is about 45 minutes. We have an optional if there's a technical lead that the hiring manager wants a candidate to talk to. And then we do a code challenge for most of our software engineering positions. And then we move on to the final interview process. So that will at least give you some preparation as to what to expect. And then it will help you prepare yourself for how to go about each of those interviews. If you know going in that, okay, well, this is a 5-step process if I make it that far. So try to find out early enough in your process of how long you can expect to go through this if you were to make it all the way through to hopefully getting an offer. And then find out, your recruiter will tell you, they will prep you, but you have to ask as well too. If you don't ask, what should I expect of this? What should I expect of that? Some recruiters may not think to share that with you, but it's not because they're not being transparent. It's just because we're all busy, and they want you to do well, but ask them questions, and then they can help prepare you for each of those stages.
Yeah, I would agree with Tim on all that. I would agree with Tim totally on all of that, that the recruiter should be able, that you usually have an initial screen with a recruiter at some point, and they'll help you know what the next few steps are. We use a behavioral based interview process. And so, I would tell, a candidate that's what is going to look like for the next couple interviews will be behavioral based. So prep for that. I think also when you're doing several different interviews, be sure that you've come prepared with questions. And I think, some of the questions can be similar so that you can ask that kind of same question and find out, are they all answering it the same? Like, what is the culture here? Or what, do you like best about your job? But also have some other questions too for each person, depending on what their level is that you're interviewing with.
Hi, I have been dropping in and out because my Wi-Fi is very unstable for whatever reason. But I would say with navigating multiple interviews, try to keep them all straight. Do a little bit of prep work right from the beginning because it can definitely be a little off-putting when candidates are like, wait, what position is this? What company is this? And I'm like, oh, you're interviewing quite a bit. So, obviously that happens, but just trying to keep everything as organized as possible. And then I think, Donna, you also asked about a failure in your role. And so I was hired at Nike. So I graduated in 2017 from the University of Oregon. Sorry, you guys, go Ducks. But from there, I worked at a staffing agency for like 6 months. Okay, Michael. and then I was actually recruited into Nike. So I was not even a year out of college, very overwhelmed. I did not expect to be working at like the world headquarters. I was a Spanish major, a business minor, and a sociology minor. And so when I was asked to take on the finance and accounting team, I was a little scared. Didn't really take a lot of math in college, not my wheelhouse, but I just went into it and kind of took a fake it till you make it attitude. And I will tell you, those accountants were not easy on me at all. They wanted spreadsheets and numbers. They wanted all the data and they wanted it now. So it was definitely a lot of late nights and some tears at the beginning as I was figuring out how to navigate Excel, but that team is so near and dear to my heart. I love going into that building because one, I hired a lot of them, but they really, I feel like when I overcame the initial like obstacle of like, how am I going to do this? What is this? And I just really dove in. That's what really helped me get to where I am now. I really used my relationships and building skills, and I asked a lot of questions, and I wasn't afraid to say, I don't know what this is. I am a professional in my field, which is talent acquisition and HR, but I'm not an accounting professional. So I think that's just really the best way to overcome strategies. Like, be honest and upfront. I didn't want to ever pretend like I know what the, like ASC 742, like the new accounting principle is. I'm going to ask. And then I think that builds the relationship, like strengthens the relationship. And then we can all actually be on the same page. And just like with reaching out to people to network, like if you ask questions, people are more than likely willing to help you. So that was a fun obstacle for me to overcome. Like I said, I'm taking on strategy right now. Same thing. I'm not a corporate strategist. So right now I'm working to understand to the best of my ability, but my job is really to find the best talent and build relationships to do so. So that's my piece.
I think that is a wonderful way to wrap up. Thank you. We know that some students do have class to get to pretty soon, and so we do want to wrap up before too many people feel like they have to just drop out. Thank you to each of the three of you so much. Your stories were wonderful, very inspiring, and some really great tips and tricks. And Pam, I got your email, so we're able to share the document with all of the participants today. So thank you. For our student participants, everything that we talked about today, career development can be your point of contact to either reconnect with one of our hosts, talk about interviewing, talk about fit, talk about what I don't even know what I want to do or where I want to start. We have Christy, who is our internship guru. So Tina mentioned a couple times the importance of internships, and we have some great intern programs that are available to get you started on those career explorations. So with that, we will say thank you to everybody. Round of applause for our three speakers today. And all of you student participants will send a follow-up email with the information that was given and also a link to this recorded session so that you can have it as well. So thank you so much, everybody.